So a toe and a toe here for opening our presentation.
I don't like microphones. You've been hear from where you are. Kia ora everybody. Wahi tua ki tēnei mihi atu ki a tātou mā. Kua tatu mai nei tēnei rā. Kia tautoko tātou katoa tēnei kaupapa I rumi a tātou. Nā reira whakatau mai, whakatau mai. Just a brief welcome in my reo to everyone who's come along who are believers. They all want to do something good for the community. So God bless you fellas all. And I'll start us with the karakia. Ki tēnei tumatu mai te koe o tātou. E te atua I nuna mātou ki a koe tēnei ata, tēnei rā. Whakawhetana mātou ki a koe nā ngā me whakatori huma ki mātou I ngā wā katoa. Tākina mātou tēnei rā, tēnei huringa. Kia pai te haero ka mātou kōrero, ka mātou whakaaro. Moto ingoa nei, ki o te ingoa to mai te iwhakaiti. Amen.
So thanks everybody for coming along today. And this, as you know, just makes it in the right place because some people came in here before. Kia ora marama. People came in here before and took some stuff out, so I hope I meant to because you can never trust anyone in Otara. No. I'm from Manawara and I judge everybody by our own low standards. So. John knows that because he's the one anyway. Thank you for coming along. This report is a sort of a sequel to a report we did about this time last year, which looked at the extent to which payment of child disability allowances was being done in a way which was fair and transparent. And at that time, there had been a significant reduction in the number of payments for no apparent reason. It wasn't as if there was a change in law or if there had been a stated change in policy. It was just the case, as seems to be the case with much of what this government does in the social policy arena, that there is a change in the outcomes which is not represented by any announced change in policy. And so one of the things that we thought we would do, and it largely came out of a discussion that we had at the launch, was that we thought we would take this further and we would initiate some research on the ground in the community that we felt possibly was most disadvantaged. And so we came out to Otara and we worked in particular with Otara Health and with Disability Connect to undertake a survey which nearly happened a year ago now, 10 months ago, in January and early February, if I recall. And basically we knocked on 1,000 doors, or more than 1,000 doors at the end. In part to basically try to get some intelligence, some understanding of what was happening in people's lives. What I'd like to do is introduce you to Jessica and not steal your thunder by telling you what's in the report. Jessica Suri is on placement at Otara Health and has been for some time, since last year. She's doing a master's degree at Waikato, isn't it? Waikato in public health. To her credit, she is a local girl. She grew up in Papatui, which for most people is just across the motorway. So Jess understands this neighbourhood because she's part of it, and I think that made it really useful as well, because we recruited somebody who could get some educational value out of what we were doing, some professional value, but also had some connection to this community and a reason to be here. So Jess, could I hand over to you, please?
Doors. We made contact with 1,000 people and we did like a bunch of surveys and got talking to people about their experiences of what their children's health was like and what it's like to sort of grow up with a child that has some sort of health problem. So we educated people about what this child disability allowance was, and opened it up to them to decide whether or not that they thought they were eligible. So we found that about 90% of the people that reported having a child with some sort of chronic health condition or disability had no idea what the child disability allowance was, and so that was quite shocking to us that a lot of people didn't know. So the second part of what we did was we tried to advocate for these people, the ones that thought that they might want to apply for it, and try to support them the best that we could. So we called them about a month after they did the survey, see how they were going. We did about 3 follow-up calls in total. And we found by the third call, most of them had decided it wasn't actually worth the trouble of applying for this allowance just because the process was so complicated. And this was after we had offered to support them through maybe they could go to the doctor with them, go to WINS with them. And a lot of them, because they were working parents, had more than one child. Most of them had more than one child with an illness. And they just couldn't make the time to actually go down there for $46 a week. So that was quite disheartening. So the recommendations that we came up with were in line with all these experiences that these families were having. Yeah. So that was the main thing that really stood out for me from this report, and it's all kind of in there. Anyone got any questions? Yeah.
Yeah, I've got a little moko and he's got eczema. Is that
So essentially we couldn't really say to the families either whether or not we thought that they would receive allowance. It depends on what your doctor says and what the people at WINS decide. So really chronic eczema can actually get the allowance, but that's up for the doctor. So you have to get a medical certificate, and that's what's really, there's no clear cut of whether you would get it or you wouldn't get it. You have to go through that process. You have to go to your doctor, and then you have to go to WINS, and you have to get all the medical certificates, and it's quite a process, and that's what was putting off a lot of families. But I did see a lot of, especially babies with really, really bad chronic eczema all through, and that it looked like it was really uncomfortable, and that the families would have to spend a considerable amount of time to try and manage it. And technically, I feel that they should, but we can't really say, and it just sort of comes down to that whole, you have to go through the process, which is really long and really complicated, and that's why we feel a lot of the families weren't actually receiving that allowance. Yeah.
How do you feel that the system could be simplified for those families? Would it be just having a doctor's certificate and then maybe an online thing, or the doctor submitting it?
I feel that the first, it would be easier if you go to the doctor and it would all go through on that one day, just because you have to kind of make separate appointments. You have to go to the doctor and you have to go to WINS. But if it could all just be done through the doctor, and the doctor next, or the admin at the doctor's next contact with WINS or something like that, and the process is sort of aligned really well, I think it could work better. But yeah, at the moment it's just, yeah, you kind of have to go back and forth from the doctor to WINS, and then if WINS is like, you're missing this document, you've got to go back to your doctor, and it's quite time consuming for families, especially with the local doctors. You don't really make an appointment, you go to the doctor and you kind of wait your turn, which I think some of the families said they waited up to 2 hours to see their doctor, and it's just too time consuming through work, managing your kids and all the other things that you have to do.
Any feedback from health professionals as to how they would be, how they feel about being involved in the process?
Well, we didn't really talk to health professionals. I did go around before we started the study to let them know, so I went around and had information from them about what we were doing with the study, and that they could be expecting a lot of people coming in regards to child disability allowance. I didn't get to speak to any doctors, just the admin people at the respective GPs that I went to, and then afterwards I did call a couple, because a couple of families asked if I could call to try and make an appointment, and they basically said I couldn't do that on behalf of anyone, they had to call and do that for themselves. So I don't really find out what the doctors thought.
Is there a workforce gap, if not health professionals? Is it a case of social workers or market facilitators being able to align themselves and associate with tautoko whānau to get through that process?
Could do it. Our organisation has community health workers that can help people, and we have them available. But I think, so the process has to be like a commitment on both ends. So if the GPs are open to it, then you could do that. You could have people out in the community that would be aligned, but there'd have to be, I think, a commitment on both ends. You can't just expect community workers to just try their best if there's not going to be any. So it has to be a partnership between work and income, between the GPs and
social workers who actually work in the Auckland Central area, not in South Auckland. So actually, and I work in the community. So actually, we do quite a lot of work with clients in terms of, taking them through the process. And usually, if the child's under the paediatrician, that's pretty straightforward because usually the paediatrician has actually, mentioned, talked to the family about it and given them a form. But if it's maybe, say, through the GP, then that certainly is a bit more difficult because often I don't think GPs actually, maybe they're not really so aware of the benefit. And also, I think things have changed quite a bit over the last few years. I think they tightened up maybe 4 or 5 years ago, and I just know that when we had medical officers working in our service at that point, they would routinely see children writing the applications, and then they'd be put through and they'd come back once we actually refuse them, because they're the people who are checking at their level were saying, no, we don't think this is appropriate for a child disability. And now I think in terms of them do visits with clients to WINS, often there's quite a few questions asked about, what is the extra work that you're doing, for this child. So, and then usually I can provide a doctor's letter, or like if they have a specialist who sees that child, we provide a copy of that as well, and often that's needed. But so it's become quite a lot tougher. The criteria is quite a lot higher. But I find with my clients a relatively easy child disability application than, say, disability allowance, which is another whole area which is very, very difficult.
Is there a clear breakdown of sort of any ethnic or cultural groups that might be missing out more so than other groups?
We didn't really analyse ethnic or cultural groups like within the sample that we dealt with. We just looked at who was getting it and who wasn't, and the majority of the ethnic groups in Otara are Māori Pacifica. So we didn't really open to any ethnic comparisons because the other groups were very small compared to the comparison to do, not with the sample. Thank you.
Thanks, Jessie. Just to let you know, there's hard copies of the report on the back table, and partly because we're an NGO that's entirely has to generate its own funding, not government funding, not government funding. If you could leave a call out there, that'd be cool. Otherwise, if you don't want the hard copy, filling up the bookcases, it's available online now, so you can download it for free online. Just picking up on a couple of points that were raised in that conversation. The first is that it's our belief that the process needs to be whole and streamlined, and that ideally it could go straight from the doctors to be a payment, and in much the same way as the doctor writes out a prescription and you effectively get a subsidy from the government for your medications, and it should be in some respects a very similar process that the doctors possibly are the people who administer the payment and not a subsequent step into WINS, which of course complicates in a number of ways, as we've seen in the survey that we did. Some people find WINS a very hard organisation to interact with. Sometimes the process of taking time out of their day for an uncertain outcome is something that discourages them. Sometimes there's a need to go back again and again. So our belief is that if we want this process to work, and ideally it could work a great deal better than it is, then we need to think about ways in which we can streamline that. One of the things that we did do, and it's in the report, we made comparisons with levels of payment in Otara with the rest of Auckland and with the rest of New Zealand. And those estimates, they were just based on estimates because, of course, it's difficult to know from work and income data exactly where someone lives. We know which office the payment was made out of, but that doesn't necessarily mean to say that they live closest to that office. And indeed, the reality is that people in Otara are served by the Otara WINS office, the Hunters Corner WINS office, and by the Manukau WINS office. So there's quite a degree of overlap across all of Auckland, but particularly in Otara. And so we made a comparison, and it appears as though the levels of provision of the community, the child disability allowance in Otara is about the same as what it is across Auckland. But that's but that's but it's much lower than other parts such as in Marareva. But if you go out of Auckland, and particularly into the central North Island, you find that levels of payment are much higher. In fact, about twice as high as they are in Auckland. And the question you've got to ask is, what on earth is the difference? Why on earth is there twice the rate of payment in a place like Palmerston North than there is in a place like Cofffey? And there's no apparent reason for that. We don't believe, for example, that's because the burden or the degree of disability is higher in Palmerston North than it is in Otara. In fact, there's evidence to suggest that child disability is a bigger issue or a more common issue, a more common challenge in places like Otara than it is in middle class communities. And so why is it that levels of payment are half what they could be elsewhere in this country? And we do ask that question because there's no apparent policy reason for it. It appears very much it's driven by local practice. That is just the way things are done in different parts of the country. And so, yeah, for us, that's a challenge. Somebody mentioned the idea of having health workers to respond to this. And one of our partners in the project was Otara Health. And I'd just like to ask John if he could, from Otara Health, to come up and say a few words.
The last 50 years of neglect of regional economies and livelihoods can't continue. People in some regions are trapped in dreams that the best they can do is to keep begging. They are resigned. These are the words of Shamabeel Tipwa, principal economist, New Zealand. I can't remember what that was now, but it's 2015 when he made that comment. In truth, South Auckland, whānau living in the suburbs, have known and experienced this paradigm consistently also, and for just as long, or perhaps much longer. Kia ora mai tātou, ko John Cofffey te poringoa, ko te pai whakahaere o Otara Health, Charitable Trust, teira, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou katoa. The purpose of my kōrero today is to talk about this report about the uptake levels of child disability allowance, and also to, and I maybe talk with the converted, ask you to consider what it is perhaps that you can do to help support the recommendations in the report. I want to touch on briefly on three points. One is Otara in the 60s and 70s. One is about our perceptions of equality, and the other one was about why it's important to support greater equity within our country, within Otara. In Otara in the 60s and 70s, right across the country for that matter, unemployment was low, education was free or easier to access. We had a more family-friendly society. State housing, Māori affairs loans, were you able to get those through the wonderful benefit, capitalising on that. And you able to buy state home or rent one. We were heavily regulated, which was good in some respects because we're all human and we all have our failings, and sometimes we do actually need to be reined in, particularly when we're running off getting big loans and things like that. So we had restrictions on how much you could loan and how much deposit you needed to have and all those sorts of things. And that helped families manage their money better. And the gap between rich and poor was bridgeable at that time. My whānau moved to Otara in 1965, and both my parents worked, but my mother didn't need to work, then she didn't work, and my father's wage was able to get us through. We lived in a state house, and we had our fair share of scabies and nits and all the rest of it. But I can remember the time that we had scabies, because we only had it once. But I'm sure there are families today who probably can't remember how many times they've had scabies. There was more community involvement, participation, and there was, at that time, capability and the capacity to be able to lift yourself out of whatever the trials or tribulations you might be facing at that time, which is different to what families are facing at the moment. A lot of them step up to get medication, get access to the services that you need. It's just not possible. It's just not there. But my mother, back in the 60s, could get out the sewing machine and run some bits and pieces stuff and sell them. She could go to work if she needed to supplement the father's income. So we never wanted for anything. We were poor, but we're not poor like the poor are today. So the perceptions of equality now, we look at, as I mentioned, the low-wage economy, the working poor, a stronger culture of self, more selfishness is what I'm talking about there, poor housing options. It leads to all of the things that we've been talking about and what I'm documented in that report. It's not all just about an allowance, it's about the environment that's been set up for people to, or unhealthy environment, set up for people to try and make a go at it. Brian Easton, who's a New Zealand economist, talks about the egalitarian society in his 2016 briefing papers published on the subject. He had a big question mark after the word egalitarian, or the phrase egalitarian society. He says the aim was that New Zealanders were all equal under the law in access to healthcare and in educational opportunity. But he also went on to say, in each case it was necessary to overlook the way in which wealth could improve people's chances. I've heard quite often people talk about they just need to off their bums and get a job. Or if I can do it, anyone can do it. And you know, I own my own home, I can't see why other people can't do it. And then my response usually is, really? And then when I ask them to inquire, where did you get the deposit from for your house? Oh, well, Mum and Dad gave it to me, of course, but I paid it back. Well, that's lovely to be able to have a mum and dad that can give you that sort of kickstart and pay them back. And it's probably interest-free as well. And then the other things, like, you know, they should just get a job. And where did you get your job? Oh, my father's factory. Got a job in my father's factory. So we're not all starting from the same place. And so that's why it's important to encourage and support greater equity for all. Greater equity benefits us all. It ensures safer and happier societies. It saves money, and it creates a sustainable environment for us all to thrive in. Reading this report is a good step to helping encourage greater equity, but it needs more. Mark Friedman, who is the architect of results-based accountability, he has a phrase which is, trying hard is not good enough. So here in Otara, a number of organisations have come together very recently, and we've recognised that trying hard is not good enough. We've got plenty of money coming into this town. Are we using it well? Are we supporting whānau well with it? So what we've done now is we're starting to look at how we can work better together in a collective way. And so the Thriving Otara Collective is what we're calling the group. Have so far had 2 hui, one with 80 stakeholders and another with 50 stakeholders who attended. And what we've worked with that group, or it's all part of us, tātou, is that we've identified an outcome that we're looking for Otara, which is that all people in Otara are thriving. And there's 9 indicators that we've identified so far as well, which will guide the work going forward, and also tell us whether we're on the right track in terms of everybody is thriving in Otara. So it's an aspiration, it's a vision that all people thrive in Otara. And so we hope that in the months to come, that those indicators will be nailed down, will be actions. And we're not talking about another program. We don't want to see another program out of Thriving Otara. We're really looking for organisations that are already delivering services, providing support in our community to stop what they're doing if it's not actually working, start something new if they need to, do more of what's working and do less of what's not. That's what we're looking for. We're not interested in another program. So we're looking for a collective impact. So if Housing New Zealand perhaps could stop terminating tenancies, social workers could perhaps knock on the door 3 more times instead of 2 times, go that extra knock just to see if we can catch the whānau at home. Work an income, be a little less saying no and do a lot more saying yes, and let's see what happens. So if we've got our indicators in place and we're doing all this great stuff, not making a difference, then we'll have to come back to the table and change what we're doing. But I think that if everybody is doing something better than what they were doing before, for fun, for children, then we should see a lift in our educational achievement and the quality of housing, unemployment or employment, and all of those sorts of things. So in conclusion, I've shared with you about recommendations, my support for the recommendations made in the CPAG report, or whether we call it the Suri report, I'm not sure. I think that's what the big time government departments do. And why encouraging and supporting greater equity for all was important. So if, like me, you agree with the notion that Otara is our community and our responsibility, what is it then that you will do to bring about positive change? I wasn't quite sure who was going to be here today, so I've sort of put down a couple of things. I thought, if you haven't voted in the election, in the general elections recently, perhaps you might choose to do that as something different. Perhaps you might write your letter to your MP and just raise about the recommendations, about the issues identified in the report. You might join a school board and try to make changes at the school board level or at the school level. You might even just choose to get behind the Charitable initiative. But whatever it is, something needs to be done differently. So stand up, make a contribution, make a positive difference. Otara's children and their whānau deserve so much better. Thank you for listening. Has anybody got any questions? Okay, so thanks for your support today and coming out. And I think if you're interested in getting in touch with us on the report, is there contact details, anything like that in the report itself? Yeah. So you can go on the website anyway, CPAG website, Otara Health, Disability Connect, and touch base with us through here. So I'll just leave you with this statement by William James, who's an American philosopher and psychologist, and he says, act as if what you do makes a difference. It does.
A late contribution, and thank you, John, for your observations and your direction of this thriving Otara. It sounds such a positive move. In the presence of a Green MP, Marama Davidson, I'd like to tell people, the Greens support working for families, fixing working for families. And if I could suggest something that could be improved, it is this in-work tax credit. And you can see our thing up there where beneficiaries are denied this. $72.50 a week if they don't fulfil the 20 hours if they're a single parent, or 30 hours as a couple. Now, this is discrimination. It's been proven, and it is something that we could really, really get behind. So I speak as a member of CPAG, and thank you for your contribution and for your support of the report, and suggest that fixing working for families is one way that we can move along.
Yeah, and I think with the general election next year, be really upon us to look at the different parties that are putting candidates forward and standing for election, and that we're looking for those child whānau friendly policies, like what we're talking about, removing the discrimination there around the work,
Tax credits.
Yeah, the tax
Yes.
credit, yeah.
And the Labour Party is prevaricating. It needs to have heavy pressure put on them. The Greens are far more progressive, of course.
Thank you. Yes, just to add to that, I couldn't help but think, in terms of future research, it would be great to have a survey in Otara of the access to working for families by these families that obviously not thriving. And to see, because not only is it that you miss out if you are not working out, or if you are not on if you're on a benefit, you miss out, but you might not be on a benefit, you might be in casual work, and still miss out. It could be because it's too complex for you to understand, it's too many forms to fill in, or it could be that you don't meet those fixed hours of work. So it'd be really good to have the hard evidence from this community as to how that major redistributed program is working.
I think as we move forward with our Thriving Otara initiative that we're part of and facilitating, there'll be opportunities there to identify behind those indicators, what's the story behind those, and how do we flush that out. And I think what we're talking about around having a survey to identify just how many people are missing out, how many whānau are missing out, will be all part of that. We're not wanting to, at our Thriving Otara hui that we're going forward with, Otara House role is to facilitate the hui in the workshops, and so we expect that what you're talking about to come from out of that the organisations, the social workers that are attending, all the different groups, those are the things that they'll say, that's an idea we need to do, that's what we need to do, rather than us say to them, we need to get a survey. But I would expect that sort of thing is the stuff that will come out of that work that we're doing, and we look forward to it.
One of the things that you find when you go out into the streets and ask people to tell you something about their lives is that firstly, sometimes they don't tell you everything about their lives because of their own desires and rights. Sometimes too that they tell you things about their lives that don't marry up with what you'd expect them to tell you about them. One of the problems, one of the challenges we faced in the research that we did was that the information that we gathered didn't necessarily reconcile to what the official figures told us we should look and we should find. For example, we covered about 20% of all of Otara in terms of our survey. And of the 2,000 doors that we knocked on, we found about 1,000 people home. What was interesting about those 1,000 households is that most of them were working. So we're not, so straight away that shapes that sort of the outside image that everyone in Otara is on the benefit. They're not, they're actually working. The other thing we found is that of that 1,000 or so households that answered our knock and responded to the initial question about whether or not they had children with disabilities, around 10% or 11% identified that children had some level of disability or chronic illness, which possibly could lead them to be eligible for a childhood disability allowance. And of those, there's only how many actually got childhood disability allowance? 7. So what you find is this very, very sharp narrowing of outcomes. And then if you look at the numbers of child disability allowances that are, we think, paid in Otara, it's around about 160. And if you survey 20% of the households in Otara and knocked on the door of found 1,000 people, you think of that sample size that you'd find at least 10% of people getting received child disability allowance. We didn't. We only found less than half of that. And one of the things that we identified early on when we were conceiving of the program was this response to disability, particularly disability of children, which is often not helpful. It's not helpful in the sense that families are, for want of a better word, shamed by their disability and look to keep it as a private issue. And that in itself then presents a number of problems about people, firstly, even believing that they're entitled to an assistance, which they are, but secondly, gaining access to that assistance, having the courage and the perseverance to actually go and get that assistance. And so one of the problems I think we've identified is that some of those doors that we knocked on, those people probably didn't tell us what was actually behind that door, and that there were problems behind that door, which were none of our business, of course, but were certainly worth thinking and talking about as an issue to try and gain better support and better policy to support those people. And so I think we do face, in Otara and elsewhere, a significant conceptual problem to do with how we see disability, and hopefully to address some of those issues. I'd like to ask Lisa Martin, who is the General Manager of Disability Connect, to come up and say a few words. So thank you.
Good morning. Yes, I'm Lisa Martin. I'm the Manager of Disability Connect, and we've been involved in the evolution of this research and the report. But I'm also mum to a 22-year-old young man with autism and intellectual disability and epilepsy. And looking back, I think my lucky stars that the paediatrician that I saw some 20 years ago when he was diagnosed told me about the needs assessment and service coordination process, and told me about the child disability allowance. Now that was 20 years ago, and I sometimes think, well, was it a different era? Maybe it was. Maybe health professionals are overwhelmingly busy. I'm not sure what the answer is there, but it was different in my day, and I'm very grateful for that. But Disability Connect, we're a disability information advisory service, so we're contracted by the Ministry of Health to provide the Auckland community with disability information and advice. So at the Cofffey, that looks like direct interactions with parents and professionals and helping them navigate the disability sector. We do a lot of seminars for the disability community aimed at parents to sort of inform them around the leaving school process, the leaving home process for people with a disability, some of the legal processes around the challenges in a sort of a education environment, preparing for adulthood and those legal responsibilities or rights when a person turns 18 years old and they're an adult. But some 7 years ago, when I joined Disability Connect, I knew and I sensed from constant questions from parents that there was a lack of knowledge and understanding about work and income supports. So we began a work and income seminar, and it's generally very well attended, but clearly there is a lot of misunderstanding around work and income supports, and one of the things that's really struck me is that there is no one single agency who is responsible for sort of a wraparound information giving to parents raising a child with a disability. And to me, this is the crux of the issue. A lot of families as well were not realising that at the Ministry of Social Development offices there are disability advisors who are experts in eligibility criteria on work and income supports, including, of course, the child disability allowance. So we got these guys involved in delivering the workshops for us. But child disability allowance has been a bugbear of ours at Disability Connect for many, many years because we just know that many families are not taking this up or are not knowledgeable that they can take this up. But in terms of the other work that we do, we have publications and so forth as well, and we do a lot of work in the culturally diverse sector. We have contract with Counties Manukau. One of the issues I think in the disability sector and right across government supports is that there's a lot of compartmentalising of the way that services are delivered. And I think this is one of the challenges. We're contracted, for example, to deliver culturally appropriate and linguistically appropriate support for the South Asian and Chinese community. And it's fantastic, and we do that. And I think we do that quite well. Naturally, the first question to us is, what about Māori and Pacifica? And it's a very appropriate question. My response to that is, of course, we would love to, and we do to a large extent. But speaking to that compartmentalisation, there's a lot of siloed activity and siloed contracting and siloed funding that happens in the disability sector. So I think that's one of the things that needs to be addressed. But in response to that, we're doing a lot of work ourselves with the open community and delivering a culturally diverse support group in Otahu to better meet the needs of the community that we know is out there. So certainly one of the findings of the report around culturally appropriate and culturally targeted, sort of a wraparound advocacy, is certainly one of the things that I can very much agree with and very much attest is what's required out there. So I want to thank Jessica and Alan and John, of course, for the evolution of this report, and it makes very interesting and sobering reading. indeed. So thank you. Any questions?
Just one, the part where you said you do very well with the Chinese, the Asian, and then I kind of went blurry when you said Mom. What
So what happens there is that I'm speaking to the sort of siloed activity, the way that often government will silo the contracting of support to the community. So not only amongst government departments, but amongst contracts within government departments. So we for example, there have a contract with Counties Manukau District Health Board, but we're required under that contract to identify and address services to particular cultures, namely the Chinese and Indian South Asian community. And I like to think we do that quite well. We run several different support groups and have access to interpreters and so forth. So that's going along really smoothly. But of course, the glaring issue is, what about Maori and Pacifica? We're asked that a lot. And I think that's a very appropriate question. The challenge, of course, is that because things are contracted and funded so separately, we see this in a sort of a helicopter vision. We can see that this is the issue. It's just that all organisations work differently, and that's why we've pushed the envelope a little bit in order to deliver what we call a culturally diverse support group to the Otahu community, because we do a lot of work at a base there, Mount Richmond Special School, and we just know that there is a whole community there whose needs are just simply not getting met. So information and advice, informing families of their sorts of supports is one of the ways that we can.
So what I'm getting from your answer there is that they're very good at asking for help in Māori, Pacifica,
I think it's a question of presenting the information in an appropriate way and making it available to families. I think that, and this is one of the challenges for anyone. I know, recently I spoke to a Pacifica support group, for example, in Otahu. I was asked to go along there and talk about various different disability supports. And the question of work and income supports came up, as it inevitably does. And this mum was telling me that she felt so stigmatised, actually, when she had approached work and income, inquiring about the child disability allowance, the very topic of this report, and the eligibility process and the process to actually apply and the various costs involved that we've spoken about this morning made it so difficult for her, and she felt so marginalised and humiliated actually at the questions that she was being asked, that in the end, well, I won't use the terminology that she used, but in the end she suggested that work and income just keep your child disability allowance actually, because it's too difficult. Which is really sad.
I just have a comment that, have you tried to approach work and income to make the application online like the current supported living and job seeker? Because I'm a GP in Otara, and I mean, I don't really see why a child with disability or parent should have to go to work and income. I mean, it is, as you say, it's often, there's a couple of areas of failing that often we as GPs forget about it, and we forget about it for adults as well. And so that's something that we need to improve. But then an online application is very straightforward for current supported living and those things. So that would avoid that whole sitting in the work and income office and answering all those questions. Is that something that you've spoken to them about or can speak to them about?
We have. I think work and income supports are a bit of an evolution in progress. They don't allude to a great deal of that with me, but certainly we have one of the Auckland Disability Advisors, and there's three, and they're based at the Ellerslie Ministry of Social Development Office. So we're in sort of constant discussions with them around work and income supports. They appear, or at least the disability advisors appear to be aware of what the challenges are, which are namely having to access your GP to get the certificate completed in the first place, some of the costs around that, and then of course, as you've alluded to, the fact that you need to physically go into a to submit that documentation. I think the issue with the child disability allowance is because there's a way up between the benefit or the value of the benefit, and it's not a huge amount of money, it helps of course, but versus the amount of effort that's involved to get it. And this is why so many families, like the Pacifica mum that I alluded to, just said, I'm not going to go there. And yet that is a very useful income to have.
Okay, thanks, Lisa.
Thank you.
You raised a really good point about online applications and might be something we pursue. I guess the real problem we have is that the poorer communities access to not just to the internet, but the technology you need, like scanners, etc., to be able to get documents online to send through. So it's going to be more trouble, but that could be something that facilitation process as well. But that wraps it up. I'd like to thank you all for showing some interest in coming here. I'd certainly like to thank our partners from Otara Health and from Disability Connect. Both of you gave us, I think, some credibility on the ground in the sense that we're a national organisation that advocates for policy issues affecting children at a national and global level. We did really try to become relevant into some of the communities we hope that our voice represents. And I think having you beside us allowed us to do that. So thank you, John and Lisa, for that. We'd also need to thank and should thank the Think Tank Trust who co-funded this project with CPAG. Kate Frickberg, who was the point of contact from the Think Tank Trust, actually participated early on in the process, and she sends her apologies. In their absence, I'd still like to thank them. So, without them and the support that we get from J.R. McKenzie Trust, none of this would be possible, because although Child Poverty Action Group is an NGO, we do rely on contributions from philanthropic organisations such as those two to support us on the way through. So once again, thank you all very much for coming forward. If there are people from the media that would want to talk to Jessica, she's only just down there, or to me, or to Lisa, or to John, by all means come and see us, and thank you for your attendance.